Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a financial trap that is literally forming in real time, and we're going to connect the dots from tensions in the Middle East directly to your wallet.
So let's just start with this stark warning. This is not about some distant crisis that you can just ignore. It's a mechanism with very, very real consequences, and it's unfolding right here, right now, at home.
The trigger for this whole thing isn't coming from Wall Street. It's not coming from Washington. It's a single, incredibly critical choke point in the Middle East called the Strait of Hormuz.
And here's why that little body of water matters so much. A staggering 21% of all global petroleum liquids, we're talking 17 to 20 million barrels of oil every single day, has to pass through this narrow strait. And here's the key. There is no other route that can replace that kind of volume. That makes it a massive vulnerability for the entire global economy.
This chart really visualizes the giant gap between where oil prices are today and where they could be headed. Right now, we're hovering around, say, $65 a barrel. But, institutional forecasts are warning that any serious disruption could send prices rocketing towards $90 or even $120. That gap represents the distance between the economy we have now and one we might not even recognize. All right, so let's bring this over to the central player in this whole story. The Federal Reserve. Because this surge in energy prices, driven by all that geopolitical risk, is pushing the Fed into what is basically an impossible corner. They are walking straight into what economists call a stagflation trap, and it is the absolute worst of both worlds. You get rising prices and a slowing economy at the same time. It's a classic lose-lose scenario where pretty much every move a policymaker can make has a really severe downside. This analogy just perfectly captures the Fed's dilemma. Think about it. On one side, you've got a cliff. That's runaway inflation. On the other side, a solid rock wall. That's a crushing recession. And they're stuck on this road, which is getting narrower and narrower with every new piece of economic data that comes out. The pressure is really building. And you can see their paralysis right here. If they cut rates to try and help the economy, they risk pouring fuel on the fire of inflation. But if they raise rates to fight that inflation, they could completely crush an economy that's already looking pretty fragile. So when you're faced with two bad choices, what do you do? Right now, they're frozen. So this pressure, it doesn't just stay with the Fed. It cascades through the entire economy. It's not a single event. It's a chain reaction. It's a series of dominoes. And believe me, the first one has already started to fall.
Okay, so here's how it works. It starts with those rising oil prices. That immediately makes transportation costs spike, because something like 70% of all freight in the US moves by truck. Well, those costs get passed on, so producer costs accelerate. Then it hits the housing market, then it starts to squeeze small businesses, and finally, it lands squarely on the consumer, who is the final backstop for the entire economy.
And because of higher interest rates, the monthly mortgage payment on a median-priced home now eats up 42% of the median household income. That is the highest level of unaffordability we have seen since the early 1990s. The housing market isn't just slowing down anymore, it is seizing up. So with wallets getting squeezed this hard, where are people turning? Yep, debt. American household credit card debt just hit a new record, $1.14 trillion. That tells you that a huge number of people are no longer spending from their income, they're spending from debt just to cover the basics.
And that debt is incredibly expensive. The average interest rate on all that credit card debt is now over 22%. Look, this is just not sustainable. It's simple arithmetic, and that arithmetic has an expiration date. The consumer is under immense pressure.
Now, if this whole situation is starting to feel a little bit familiar, it absolutely should. We need to look at history, because this is not the first time the U.S. economy has faced this exact kind of trap.
Back in the 1970s, a couple of major oil shocks, both triggered by events in the Middle East, sent energy prices soaring. And the result was stagflation, a whole decade of high inflation and stagnant growth. It took the Fed chair at the time, Paul Volcker, raising interest rates above 20% to finally break inflation's back. But it came at the cost of a really brutal recession.
But, and this is a big but, here's the key difference that makes today's situation potentially even more dangerous. In the 70s, that inflationary pressure came from one source, oil. Today, it's coming from two sources at the same time, rising energy costs and a new round of trade tariffs. That makes the trap even tighter. So where does this leave us? Well, the future isn't set in stone. Analysts see about three main paths this whole thing could take, and it all depends on what happens next.
So in the best-case scenario, tensions cool off, oil stays low, and the Fed can start to cautiously cut rates. Then you have the base case, which is what most forecasters are betting on. Oil just grinds higher, inflation stays sticky, and we face a long period of stagnation. But in the stress case, if oil spikes past $100 a barrel, the stagflation trap springs shut, and that forces the Fed into an emergency decision with no good outcome.
So how are we going to know which path we're actually on? Well, we don't need a crystal ball. You just need to watch 3 key variables really closely over the next 60 to 90 days.
First, watch the trend in oil prices. If Brent crude starts staying above $80 a barrel, the pressure is building. Second, listen to the language the Fed is using. If that word, patient, suddenly disappears from their statements, that's a signal they're getting worried. And third, watch the next couple of inflation reports. If core inflation keeps climbing, the market's going to react, and it's going to react fast.
The main takeaway here is this: the link between that narrow waterway thousands of miles away and the price you pay for food at the grocery store is not theoretical. It's a direct, mechanical chain reaction. And right now, every single link in that chain is under tension.
This isn't a prediction, but it is a structural vulnerability that is now active in our economy, which of course leaves us with the real question: how long can it hold?
Comment FED if you're watching.